Ahead tonight, the Prime Minister not mincing words on the legal impact of the Bahamar bankruptcy case.
Residents of the Gamble Heights shantytown sound off on the government's decision to destroy this village. We'll bring you all the details coming up in the Bahamas tonight.
And the PLP chairman shares details on his party's upcoming convention. The Bahamas Tonight, the national report starts right now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Every Day.
We start off with breaking news off the top tonight as a prominent figure within the Grand Bahama community has died. Good evening, everyone. I'm Chris Saunders. Thank you for joining us here tonight. Former Grand Bahama Port Authority co-chairman and president and noted Grand Bahamian businessman Sir Albert Miller passed away at his home in Freeport around 4:30 this afternoon following a very long illness. Sir Albert, who was known for his passion to see the city of Freeport grow and develop, retired from the Port Authority in 2003, and following Hurricane Francis, which devastated the island in 2004, he was asked by the late chairman, Edward St. George, to come out of retirement for a few months to assist with the restoration process. Sir Albert died at the age of 89. Stay tuned to ZNS News for continuing coverage of the life and legacy of a business icon, Sir Albert Miller. Now, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Immigration, the Honorable Fred Mitchell, joins us live to talk about his condolences. Now, Minister Mitchell, you called him a part of the Troika, the leadership, the old leadership of the Golden City, the Magic City of Freeport. How has this been impacting you? You called him one of your closest friends.
Without doubt, and tonight I want to first express condolences to his wife and to his children on this very sad occasion. I've spent many a time in their home around their luncheon table, and he would have, had he been alive, been sitting this evening watching this newscast. And so, you know, that's how life is, and it's very sad, but I'm really pleased to have known him. My parents chose him as a benefactor for me. He's a great Bahamian, not confined to Grand Bahama. And apart from his work with the Grand Bahama Port Authority, in a generation before that, he rose to become the Deputy Commissioner of Police. But for the political fortunes of the country, would have been the Commissioner of Police. It's something he regretted, but I've introduced him, had the opportunity to introduce him to my aides, both of whom are police officers, young men, and I wanted them to see what you can start off as in this country as a constable on the force and rise to become one of the wealthiest and most powerful Bahamians in our country in one generation.
You talked about him being one of the wisest and most influential Bahamians in our country. Just how widespread was his influence throughout the Bahamas?
He was a benefactor in the private sector. He was an advisor to prime ministers, to governors general, to people large and small. And the thing that was interesting about him was the humble beginnings. This is a man, he told me a story that when he was a baby, he never knew his mom. He was 6 months old. There was a hurricane in the 1920s, and he was being taken back to his home island of Long Island. And he fell overboard as a 6-month-old baby. And he was rescued by someone from the seas, and they were shipwrecked. And his mother never recovered from the dangers of that accident and died within a year of that accident. And he was raised by his older sister. And from that, he became a police officer and rose to the rank of Deputy Commissioner of Police. And then Wallace Groves invited him to move to Freeport and became the security head of the casino. And then the rest is history, when he and Edward St. George and Jack Hayward teamed together to make Freeport the Magic City.
This now leaves a definitive void in Freeport and on Grand Bahama, and definitively also, I think, in the country. How, as a country and Freeport and Grand Bahama itself, how are we going to, I guess, recover from this absence of Sir Albert?
Well, I think that the story of the Bahamas, the great story of the Bahamas in the 20th century, and what we as a public policy, from a public policy point of view, are trying to engender, is the idea of social mobility, that you can be born in one social class, the lowest class, and rise to the top. And I think that story continues today. There are many, many more like Sir Albert who are coming up behind him, and we're really grateful for the contribution which he made to our country, and I believe this will endear him to us. And I commend people to follow his example of a humble man who rose to the heights in the land and made a success at making a contribution to our great country.
All right, Minister Fred Mitchell, Minister of Immigration, joining us, and Foreign Affairs, joining us here live tonight as we have continuing coverage of the passing of Sir Albert Miller. Minister, thank you so much again for joining us here tonight. In other news, we're just a day away from the Baha bankruptcy case returning to court here in Nassau, and everyone awaits a decision that will hopefully move the resort one step closer to opening. Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Perry Christie, recently discussed with ZNS News the legal battle and his decision to remove the Minister of State from the matter. This as the fate of the $3.5 billion Baha resort remains in limbo, as developers and their partners have yet to reach an agreement. It's a story you'll only hear from our Cleopatra Murphy.
Government and Baha attorneys are set to return to court Wednesday to continue the Baha winding up case, but Prime Minister the Right Honorable Perry Christie says he had hoped parties involved would have come to an agreement before that time.
What we were hoping all along is that the developer who's put so much effort into the product itself, having 97% completed it, would not just allow it to go, but he instead would find some way of accommodating himself to the requirements of the bank, China Export-Import Bank, and the construction company.
A government team headed by Attorney General Alison Maynard Gibson headed to Beijing twice to facilitate negotiations between Baha and its partners to no avail. The parties are still in negotiations to restart the project. If those fail, Christie says the matter will proceed in court.
It will then obviously be whether the court decides that a provisional liquidator will be appointed, and if a provisional liquidator is appointed, then it's a different kind of situation at Baha.
Last week, Minister of State for Legal Affairs, the Honorable Damien Gomez, removed himself from representing government in the pending case on the advice of the Prime Minister. While Gomez represented government when it sought to have Baha's Chapter 11 bankruptcy dismissed, Christie says he did not want Gomez involved as government moved to wind up the property.
I did not want the image of a member of the cabinet pursuing and prosecuting that fight. I wanted people to see, independent of the government, that process was taking place. So people don't confuse the fact, and even though Damien is correct, and the Minister responsible for legal affairs is correct, that he has a duty to the court when he appears and not a duty to the cabinet, it's difficult for people to draw that fine distinction.
The case resumes Wednesday before Justice Ian Winder. Christie says well-known English attorney Peter Knox QC will represent government. Cleopatra Murphy, ZNS Network News.
Ahead of tomorrow's liquidation court hearing, Chairman of the governing Progressive Liberal Party, Bradley Roberts, is talking candidly about the issue as he also announced details for the party's upcoming national convention while appearing on this morning's Daryl Miller live talk show on the Bahamas Radio Network. For more on that, here's Clint Watson.
Baha will not be an election issue for the PLP going into the 2017 general election. That's the view of party chairman Bradley Roberts. Despite criticism that the Baha crisis could negatively affect the party, Roberts sees it differently.
I have every reason to believe that Baha will be open before the end of this year. So it will not be an election issue, in my opinion.
In a matter of hours, the liquidation decision in the Supreme Court will be heard. Roberts says Bahamas developer Sarkis Ismailian has a short span of time to determine his next move.
If Mr. Ismailian does not accept the deal that was offered and agreed, come the 19th, the process will begin in the Supreme Court of the Bahamas. D-Day is tomorrow, and the proceedings will commence. And the judge will be invited to take and agree to certain course of action.
Roberts says if liquidators are appointed, they will work with the construction company to get the resort opened and the creditors paid. While this process is taking place, the ownership will be determined and a possible sale set. And while this can be a lengthy process, Roberts says it doesn't have to interfere with the resort's opening. As for the money government is using to pay salaries, Roberts says it will be deducted from the amount government owes Bahama, which is speculated to be around $30 to $35 million. As to how long government will pay the Bahamian salaries,
they will pay until the money runs out.
Which is not long now. We're paying $7 million every 2 weeks.
Turning to the party's business, the last time the PLP held a national convention was in 2009, but that will change come November 1st to the 7th of this year, when the party will hold its much-anticipated national convention at the Melure Resort, the last one before the 2017 general elections.
So we will begin with a prayer breakfast on Sunday morning, the 1st of November at 7:30 a.m. And we will close on Saturday, November the 7th at 8 p.m. with an installation ball and banquet.
This is a full week.
Yes, sir. We will have closed day sessions beginning on Wednesday, the 4th at 9:30 a.m. and night sessions are open to the public at 8 p.m. The Deputy Prime Minister and Deputy Leader, the Honourable Philip Brave Davis, will speak at the opening night on Wednesday, and the Right Honourable Perry Christie, Prime Minister and Party Leader, will close out the convention on Friday night. Nomination is likely to be held the first day of the convention, sir.
That's Monday, November 2nd.
Yes, sir.
Minister Shane Gibson and Senator Joseph Curry are co-chairing the convention committee. At this point, there are no clear indications as to who will be running for the party's senior positions. However, Roberts says there is nothing in the constitution of the party prohibiting a single person from being elected as leader. Clint Watson, ZNS Network News.
Mr. Roberts tonight also criticizing comments made by St. Agnes Anglican Church Rector Archdeacon Iran Fully Brown in this week's Sunday Bulletin. Archdeacon Brown was dissatisfied that the funeral program of a longtime church member nearly 2 weeks ago was altered to allow a list of speakers to address the service after it was initially approved by him. Archdeacon Brown lamented that the speaker spoke more than the allotted 3 minutes despite his instructions. Prime Minister the Right Honourable Perry Christie was among those speakers singled out by the Archdeacon, who described the incident as disrespectful. The Archdeacon announced that he would not allow such occurrences at funerals again and would be streamlining funeral programs, as any changes made outside of the church's approval would not be accepted and ignored. Chairman Roberts, who also spoke at that funeral, says he was surprised by the Archdeacon's reaction.
Courtney spoke, was the first speaker. I was the second. Franklin Wilson, the chairman of our company, also spoke, and then the Prime Minister. And
you said you all spoke too long.
Well, you know, I've attended many funerals here before, and it was not unusual, in my opinion. But maybe there's a new dispensation that I was not aware of. But according to the pastor, that he said the family made certain arrangements, etc., and so on. But I think that's something that they need to work out. And family, I just say this final comment. Families don't fight in public.
No.
You do not do that. That is wrong, that it goes against all the principles and tenets that I have been instructed to follow.
Immigration Minister, the Honourable Fred Mitchell, says he wants that shantytown in Gamble Heights, where the recent police-involved shooting took place, eliminated, admitting that the removal of the shantytown is needed because through a combination of artifice, scams, corruption, and intimidation, illegal migrants continue to occupy that area. Residents, however, say that there are more issues and greater issues than that. Janaea Noel Ferguson tonight has both sides of that story.
Efforts are underway by the government to dismantle a shantytown in the Gamble Heights area. Minister of Foreign Affairs and Immigration Fred Mitchell revealed this was prompted by a number of violent encounters with residents, coupled with last week's police-involved shooting and damage to a police vehicle.
We had to withdraw from that area during an interdiction exercise because the bus that immigration was using was being pelted by rocks by people in that neighborhood.
The government, he said, had made previous attempts to demolish the shantytown, but resources remained a challenge.
This is resources. See, this is one thing people have to understand about our country. We don't have infinite resources, and there are things which take priority.
Now, we visited the Gamble Heights shantytown Tuesday, which seemed to stretch for miles. Many residents there are too afraid to speak publicly. Those that did speak claim this shantytown is the only home they know.
But then this land here, this was in dispute like for years and years and years. The government, whatever it is what they could do, I mean, people will move on and find somewhere to live.
If the government come to tear down the place, you know, I know what they'll do, but they'll find a way. They'll find a way.
The issue, they said, highlights an even bigger problem. Many individuals of Haitian descent are working and living in the Bahamas without the proper documentation.
Like me, I'm a Haitian. I born here, grew up here. I don't know nothing about Haiti. I know a little bit of compa, a little bit of legume, and you know what I'm saying? I used to dry bread and Johnny, remember Ronnie Butler and Elor Moxie and John Canoe. That's all I know. You see what I'm saying? So it don't make no sense. The government coming to do this. They should make a thorough investigation and get more information.
While Mitchell stresses that it's all a part of the government's continuation of its shantytown shutdown, the residents believe this is all being done because of the events that happened last week when a resident was shot by a police officer.
They covering that police officer negligence in the back of there. A whole man died.
Now, Gamble Heights residents are still emotionally charged over last week's shooting of Vixamar Nixon, who, according to police, had several reported complaints against him. Authorities say the matter is now under investigation by Her Majesty's coroner. Janae Noel Ferguson, ZNS Network News.
This portion of the news is brought to you by the new Shell and Letty, designed for extra miles.